Hi, I'm Risa Nelson, and today I'm reading Chapter 1 from my new novel, Our Lady of the Absolute. This video is split into two different videos, Part 1 and Part 2, so this is the first part of Chapter 1. Isis help me, Mary's thought. My life has always been childless. Save me from living without hope. She stood waiting in the city's central park, preferring to stand in the direct sunlight and take comfort from its heat than seek the shade. Today, like most days, the air felt dry and hot and smelled like lotus blossoms. The sun blazed high overhead in a cloudless sky, and red sandstone mountains jutted up at the edge of the white-walled city. Rain and snowmelt trickled down the mountain, supplying the city with 6 natural springs. Throughout the city, lawns were green and grassy, places like this park, a welcome sanctuary for the city's residents. Camels and donkeys grazed inside a corral by the park, and the heaviness of their scent in the air made her nose twitch. She watched as a naked boy ran across the grass toward the 100-foot-high granite statue of the pharaoh. The boy's head was shaved, except for a side lock of hair, a symbol indicating his age lay between 5 and 9 years old. She frowned. The boy looked younger than 5, making the haircut a lie. Clearly, he was not an orphan, or he would have been beaten for such a lie. Despite the sun's warmth on her skin, Mary shivered. She had a dim memory of her parents and the day she'd been told they'd been killed by crocodiles. Mostly, she remembered the orphanage and the most important lesson she learned: follow the rules to the letter, or face the consequences. A slight breeze distracted her as it penetrated her lightweight linen dress. The narrow, ankle-length skirt billowed between her legs, cooling her skin. With her long blonde hair dressed in tiny braids, she was grateful to feel the light air graze her scalp. She knew the black kohl she'd used to enlarge and extend her eyebrows and eyes should reduce the glare of the sun, but she squinted nonetheless. As much as she loved the desert sun, it could be hard on the eyes, and especially on Mary's light golden brown skin. Mary's took a seat on one of the park benches and looked around at the lush greenery. It was hard to believe that the Black Land was a desert country. As her husband so often loved to tell her, its name came from the black silt deposited on the farmland when the Nile rose above its banks every year. Towns were few and far between, separated by miles of barren sand. Surrounded by a high white wall and guarded gates, the white-walled city served as the royal hub of the Black Land. In her late 30s, Mary thought of herself as a typical Blacklander. She lived in a simple house with her husband. She embraced the gods and goddesses of the Black Land's religion with open arms. She followed the pharaoh's laws by the book. Mary's regretted only one thing. She and her husband Ramose had no children. The goddess Isis herself, known to Blacklanders as Our Lady of the Absolute, had struggled against all odds and succeeded in having one child. Being a mother was what defined any Blackland woman as mistress of her own house. Mary's reflected that her husband Ramose was lucky. He loved his work, and everyone respected him as a man who pulled his own weight. But without children, Mary's felt as if she'd been locked out of the walls of the city on a cold desert night, while everyone else celebrated at a festival. No matter how loud she cried out, no one could hear her. She felt invisible and lonely, the same way she felt growing up in the orphanage. But Mary's drew strength from her faith in the gods. Of all those deities, Mary's most admired Isis, Our Lady of the Absolute, the goddess of all goddesses. Our Lady had suffered many hardships and conquered them all. Lady Isis, she thought, if I accomplish one thing in life, my wish is to become just like you. She looked longingly at families picnicking in the shade of oak and poplar trees. Donkeys and horses grazed on grassy fields while eyeing the park's fenced flower gardens. One donkey brayed mournfully, and as the wind shifted, Mary's caught a whiff of its pungent, dusty scent. Lotus blossoms floated in a long reflecting pool flanked by spiky papyrus plants. "Look at me!" the small boy shouted as he ran toward the pharaoh statue. The gigantic stone image of the pharaoh stood straight and tall, arms by his side, with one foot in front of the other as if frozen in mid-step. Bare-chested, the statue wore a white kilt and the official headdress of royalty. The pharaoh wasn't simply the king of the Black Land. He was its living god. He symbolized all gods that watched over the Black Land and its people. Most considered his image sacred, Mary's included. Her throat tightened with anxiety when the boy jumped up on the statue's bare foot. Giggling, he peed on the statue. "Oh no," Mary's thought. "No one has taught him how to worship the gods. He's in violation. Someone has to stop him." Mary's gasped in horror and hurried toward him. Breaking through a row of hedges behind the statue, a young woman raced to scoop the boy up in her arms. She looked like a teenager. Still urinating, a steady yellow stream arced away from the statue and soiled the young woman's dress. The boy screamed and squirmed in the young woman's arms. "No!" Mary's remembered running away on the day her parents died. Someone had chased her down and she'd tried to squirm away just like this boy. What if the same thing has happened to him? Mary's thought in a sudden panic. What if that's why he's urinating on the pharaoh? Because he needs someone to blame for his parents' deaths. Mary's looked up and scanned the park until she spotted the nearest Eye of Horus. She ran toward it, waving her arms and pointing at the statue, the young woman, and the boy. The eye was a small camera mounted on a tree limb. Dozens of eyes peppered the white-walled city. This one responded to Mary's and pivoted to face the statue. The young woman hurried away as the boy squirmed in her arms. "Hey!" Mary shouted. Adrenaline rushed through her as she realized this woman might be a foreigner. Mary's had learned at a young age that foreigners were dangerous and not to be trusted. Few were ever granted admittance into the Black Land. The young woman ignored her, struggling to keep the boy in her arms. His wails pierced the still air. Mary's caught up and grabbed the other woman's elbow. "Stop!" Mary shouted. "Foreigner!" The young woman's face flushed with shame and exertion. "Please," she whispered. "I'm a Blacklander. Let me go." And that is the end of part 1 of chapter 1. So please look for the video where I'll read part 2. And thank you.